this morning we talked about fear, the fears, fear of conflict, fear of rejection, fear of
Failure.
failure. Always forget that one. I think it's
Because
very,
you don't
very
fail.
telling. No,
You're too big to fail. You're too big to fail.
But
You're like Goldman Sachs. No.
so it's so interesting. I did make them pay for my MBA though, so there's ways that you can make corporations pay. And it was difficult to move to that space, but it's like, okay, I'm going to change the world in social justice and you're going to pay for it. But anyway, so fear, thinking about these issues of fear, it impacts where you're at here with these self-limiting beliefs, right? How you're moving in the world, how you function in your workplaces when you're responding to not enough time, not enough money, not enough sleep. All of this stuff is connected. And so what we wanted to happen out of the information we've given you this morning is just to give you a chance to think about these things out in the open, to start having even just a dialogue with yourself about what are you going to do about these things. Someone had mentioned in the report back, like it was, the moments where you're checking yourself around white privilege, right? And do I get to move forward and say that or not? But there's also part of it just knowing, just being aware that this is at play. That's what you want to do with these fears. We're not sharing these with you to hinder you, to slow you down. It can be very freeing to step into it and confront it. And that being said, we're not just throwing it at you. We do have some antidotes that we know work when you're trying to confront behaviors that come with fear and these self-limiting beliefs. And the first one is calmly bring up uncomfortable topics that no one else wants to broach. That's a really hard one. Yeah, I heard someone like calmly. And it purposely starts with the word calmly. Not that it's always easy, but you have to start somewhere and you have to bring up uncomfortable topics. Simply because we don't bring it up, it's not just gonna go away. It's just not gonna resolve itself. It never happens. Like you might only bring it up with your executive team and it somehow gets resolved there. Trust the rest of the organization. If they're not clear and it hasn't been brought up with them, it's still muddling around. It's still causing disruption in your organizations as a whole to move forward, to move the mission forward. So whatever work you need to do based on the stuff that we've talked about today, trust, transparency, fear, bias, to get to a place where you can sum up the courage that you need to calmly bring up uncomfortable topics that no one else wants to broach, you need to do that. It is okay if your voice shakes, right? There's a quote by Audre Lorde, I believe it's Audre Lorde, who says, speak even, I'm going to totally mess up the quote, so you're going to need to Google it later. But something about speak even if your voice shakes, right? It doesn't matter. Like when I was practicing the welcome for this morning at home, I had to keep reminding myself to breathe because I was so nervous. And I was so anxious, but that's, it wasn't, I just kept telling myself, this morning at 5, I was like, well, it's happening. Like, there's not much I can do about it. Like, if my voice shakes, my voice shakes. You need to tell the truth. So in order to tell the truth, you got to prepare, right? You got to get your thoughts aligned. And you don't, like we tend to, when we come to the fear of conflict and fear of rejection, we beat around the bush. So it's not like we lie, but we just don't tell the whole truth. We say just enough to make sure you don't get mad at me, or to make sure you show up for work tomorrow, or to make sure that project gets emailed out, right? We tell just enough. And that's all real. There's no judgment when I say that. Those are all real, but it comes back to what I mentioned this morning. You want to make change. This is work for the courageous. Like, it has to start somewhere because we keep doing the same things over and over and over. And generation after generation, our nonprofits are still stuck here, right? And I shouldn't say, I don't want to belittle the work that has happened before us because there is a lot of work that has driven forward. And there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. The second step is to set expectations. That goes back to the preparation. You need to be clear with yourself and with your team. What are the expectations you have? Once you've brought up a topic, you've told the truth, where do you go from there? It's not enough just to bring up the topic and tell the truth. You have to actually set expectations of where you're going to go and revisit it. One of the things that Steve and I tell organizations when we do this just internally with a single organization at the end of the training, we remind the CEO or the ED, don't get cold feet. And that's often why, like, you do all this work, you put all this work in, and then the very first time that you try to produce a grid, or some of the work we're going to do with you later today, on your own, and it doesn't work exactly the way it did with Steve and I, who have been doing this for 5 years, every day, all day long, you stop the process. You can't do that. You can't stop the process. You can't get cold feet. You have to keep coming back. If you notice, I keep saying the same things to you guys over and over. I'll come back and I'll remind you about this fear. I'll remind you about that. That's adult learning. That's just how we learn. You have to, we're all teenagers. You have to repeat the same thing over and over and over again. Eventually it's going to land, right? And it's funny because I was thinking, oh, it takes a lot of time, but you're already taking a lot of time, right? It'll take revisiting decisions over and over again. You're already taking a lot of time. Try it a little bit differently. And then lastly, use direct and empathetic language. So this goes to the, someone talked earlier, there's a difference between New Yorkers and Californians. Absolutely. I'm born, New Yorker, born on Long Island. I learned very quickly when I came to California that the direct nature with which I communicated was not well received. Not well received. And plus I had a serious Long Island accent, so it was in Southern California, so it was really bad. But what I've learned is that you can still be direct. You have to be direct, but have empathy. Like when you're having this conversation with folks, and it goes back to what Lakshmi's saying, plan, prepare for it. It's okay if you walk in there with stuff written down, right, or on your phone or whatever. That is okay. We get so stuck in this idea that we have to be perfect, which has a lot to do with our gender, that, we miss the part where, no, it doesn't have to be perfect. Write it down, talk to your people, take the time, go slow, have empathy.